For centuries, there have been rumors of a gigantic creature lurking in the depths of a loch deep in Scotland. Today, we dive back into the world of cryptids as we discuss the realm of possibilities surrounding the infamous Loch Ness Monster. This is Red Web. It's another Mystery Monday. I'm Trevor Collins. That's Alfredo Diaz. Super excited to be hearing that we're covering Loch Ness, it sounds like.
Nessie?
Yeah.
Oh, Nessie. Oh, Loch Ness?
Oh, Nessie.
Oh, my goodness. I thought this would pop up eventually.
Oh, of course.
Not 50 episodes in, but eventually. And here we are. Yeah, I mean, this is another one where it's just like, I have heard about it.
Right.
Pretty much all my life, right? And it's been recycled around different types of media, right? Whether it be audio, video, books.
There was definitely a movie, right? There was a movie where somebody like adopted this little hippopotamus monster and they grew it up in their bathtub.
Yeah,
and then it became Nessie, right? I never saw it, but man, did I see the previews for that thing a million times.
I remember playing Apex, and there's like a little this little, I guess, a little stuffed toy that you can find on the map.
Oh yeah,
it looks like Nessie too as well. And so it's like. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's the Loch Ness Monster. Ooh, but it's like, do I know where it is? Do I know anything about it? Like the theories around it, what it eats, what it shits? I have no clue.
It eats what it shits. It's all one thing. That's why it's a cryptid. Everything passes through exactly as it went in. Yeah, I mean, the Loch Ness Monster is arguably one of the most popular, well-known cryptids of the world, Bigfoot probably being numero uno.
Yeah.
Up there with the Yeti and all that. Oh, he has huge feet. Yeah. But yeah, the Loch Ness Monster, I'm sure that everybody listening at home right now knows about the Loch Ness Monster. In fact, if you don't know about the Loch Ness Monster, I would love to hear from you. If we're the one breaking open this story for you, I'd be fascinated to hear from you.
I would say stop.
Uh-huh.
Go to, I don't know, your phone or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Pull up Twitter.
Yes.
Tweet at RedWebPod.
Yes.
And write what you think the Loch Ness Monster is.
Right now. Just absolutely gut instinct. Fredo, I love that you're passing the gut check to the task force at home. I want to hear from you.
Like,
we got a Scottish lake. We've got a monster who's called Loch Ness. The nickname's Nessie. It's all you have to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
Hit me with it.
Yeah, hit us with it. Like, what do you think it is? Give us that description. If you throw at me that there's a family of Loch Ness monsters and some of the theories, I will leave this damn podcast. If you throw another Bigfoot situation at me, I'm like, look, there's a handful of them hanging out in the trees. I'm like, bro, come on, man.
It's a convention every year.
Every year they get
together. They go to Scotland just because it's the tax havens in the cryptid world. You don't know cryptid law, but I'm well-versed in it. Yes, I'm a cryptid lawyer.
I'm actually a lawyer in cryptid law.
Cryptography.
Cryptocomplicated.
Yeah, it's cryptocomplicated, actually.
Yes, it is.
But yeah, let's dive into it a little bit, like the origin of Loch Ness. This will probably be where I tickle your brains a little bit more with stuff you might not know about the origin of Loch Ness, how the lore, the stories, the creature, all of that kind of came to be so popular. And then obviously we'll dive into the investigation, some popular photos, Fredo, I've got for you that I'm sure the audience at home has seen or know of. And then the other bit of housekeeping I wanted to say, a few episodes ago, we shouted out the Casual Criminalist, and they did as well. They shouted us out in a recent episode of theirs. And I just wanted to say, like, you guys have been really awesome and resonating with us and connecting us with Simon. And it's been really cool to see how many people listen to both shows because, honestly, I listen to many of Simon's shows. He's the host of a lot of fantastic products. So, again, I'll just give him another little nudge. Casual Criminalist, if you like what we do here, you're going to love what he does there. It's very similar, talking about mysteries with a lot of humor along the way. But yeah, with that said, that was just a freebie. I'm just geeking out, little fan right now. But
just a fan of it.
But yeah, let's dive into the episode. Let's talk about the Loch Ness Monster. So as you know, it's an aquatic monster rumored to live in Loch Ness. A loch is essentially a lake or a sea inlet, and Ness, the idea of Ness, comes from the river Ness that flows into this particular body of water. Therefore, you have Loch Ness. That's where the monster gets its name. It's also nicknamed Nessie, as you mentioned earlier. And this loch is located in the Highland Council area of Scotland. Now I'm wondering if this monster has a beautiful Scottish accent.
Most likely.
I'm just picturing a very sophisticated Scottish Loch Ness Monster. I won't attempt it too far.
You touched it for a second. I went, oh.
He did. He looked right at me. He was like, oh.
What?
But yeah.
The attempt.
Loch Ness is one of the 4 lochs that sit in Great Glen. This was a valley that was created by glaciers back in the last ice age that kind of carved their way through there, creating these low spots. For...
I've seen that movie, that squirrel.
What squirrel? Great Glen?
Ice Age.
Oh, God damn. Oh, man. Oh, man. How'd I miss that one? This man's rolling around on the floor, laughing at me. All right, I'm gonna pull this one back. A dandelion must be the last one of the season.
Got him,
dude. Dude,
what squirrel?
I'm like, squirrel, dude. What movie's Great Glen? What are you talking about?
Oh my god! That could have got any better.
Okay. Christian, please.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm keeping it under control.
All right, everyone. Serious. So let's talk about the loch, because not a lot of people have a very good idea of what maybe this looks like or the size of this lake, because we're talking about an arguably huge monster swimming around this thing. So I want to outline for you just how, like, modest.
Give me measurements.
I'll give you some strict measurements in 2 different units for your pleasure.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So 788 feet in depth. That's 240 meters if you prefer. But it's very deep, but it's also 23 miles long or 37 kilometers. So it is the largest body of fresh water found in Great Britain. A relatively small landmass surrounded by salt water. So it's a pretty significant thing to have this big of a body of fresh water.
Yeah, that's a significant drive.
Yeah.
Alone. All right. Well, that's good, because if you told me it was in like a little itty bitty pond.
Yeah, also found in Skeleton Lake. Just right next to those 1,500 bodies or whatever.
Jesus.
Yeah, because I always thought, like, all right, if we have some sort of prehistoric monster kind of trapped in this body of water, how is that the case? Yeah. But also, like, is it able to move? Can it just turn around and it just does U-turns all day? Like, but no, it is quite the big size loch. Another point of note here that I will circle back around to, but I didn't know about, the average temperature of Loch Ness year-round is about 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius, so barely above freezing.
That is chilly.
Don't want to go on a swim.
That is chilly. So if you tell me there's not a lot of people that have gone into the water looking for Nessie, I don't know why now. It's freezing.
Yeah, not a tropical getaway here. But when it comes to the idea of a sea monster inhabiting this particular lake, this concept, it's been around since ancient times, where the Pict would carve images of mysterious beasts with flippers onto stones in the area. So these ancient groups of peoples known as the Pict, they lived in what is now northern and eastern Scotland, but this was during the early Middle Ages that they are depicting this very strange beast in the water, or at least around the watery area, has these fins, and they've carved what, at least, it's either a story of theirs, obviously, or it's eyewitness accounts, and they're carving what they've seen into the stones in the area.
I was just about to say, how do we know it's not like a story that was being told?
Right.
Know? But, okay.
So it's going far back.
Yeah, that goes way further back than I thought. I'm interested in, because I know we'll get there, in seeing, like, the different time periods that quote unquote evidence pops up, or sightings and stuff like that. But it's nice to kind of like know where it starts somewhat, you know?
Yeah. It's really interesting how far back it starts.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll be honest, like, you see, like, you hear about it in media or whatnot, like every now and then the story or like in a movie, but like from, you know, what I've seen, it's just like, oh, it's just like a picture of a shadowy figure in a lake, right? And so to me, I was like, that must have been how they thought there was something there, but like through carvings is actually pretty interesting.
And the first written account, so we have the first carving, the first kind of depictions that we've seen, but now the first written account of the Loch Ness Monster dates back to 565 AD in the biography of Saint Columba. I'll kind of dive into that a little bit, but just to get you up to speed really quickly for those who aren't historians, which most of us I'm sure aren't, St. Columba was an Irish monk who became the most important Scottish saint of his era and most well known for converting the Scottish Picts, who I just recently talked about, to Christianity. Now, he and one of his missionaries, Adamnan, were the two who encountered the monster, and Adamnan went along to write the aforementioned biography, and that biography was entitled Life of St. Columba. And it was in this biography that the Loch Ness Monster was first mentioned. And it's really interesting how it comes about. Again, it's really hard to kind of delineate, is this fanciful storytelling or is this a real encounter? But I guess that's what we're going to have when you talk about a cryptid. But in the biography, he outlines this mysterious creature that claimed to have bitten a swimmer and was headed for yet another swimmer until St. Columba ordered the beast to leave. At that point, the creature supposedly obeyed Columba and was only sighted occasionally in the centuries to follow.
All right, that is like a fluff piece on the story.
I think you might be right. You might be right.
If you said they saw an encounter, bit a swimmer, was going for another swimmer, look, I got nothing there, right? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. The fact that this priest, I would be surprised if you didn't have also walked on water as he talked to raised his hands towards the beast and said back and then
back,
it went away.
Heathen.
Yeah, I mean, what?
If your goal is to kind of convert people of the area to your particular flavor of religion, you might want to kind of
claim that you
you might want to put some extra efforts under your belt a little bit. You might want to claim a little bit,
spice up some stories, conjure up some tales. Yeah, that part just makes me go, nah, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
no way.
But I mean, if there was someone that was bitten, where's their biography? I want that biography. Maybe it's just called Bite.
Yeah,
story of me
bitten.
I want bitten.
Also, damn. The Loch Ness Monster is old.
Very, yeah. That's this is the information that I was like, ooh, this is a little spicy. I like this.
I'm also interested in seeing what the latest encounter or the most recent finding is, because I want to see how old we're thinking the Loch Ness Monster is at that point.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I think there's two schools of thought here, and we'll kind of dive into it in the theories a little bit. But on the whole, is it one creature or is it a species, a very rare species located in this, and that every now and then you see one of these species and we just kind of go, that's that monster? Because otherwise, if it is one creature, it's centuries and centuries and centuries old.
Really?
On the other hand,
I mean, turtles live for a long time.
That's true. Maybe Nessie's a turtle.
It's a big old Christian Chase. He's like, I don't know about that one. I know about that, Chief.
Let's try to keep it quiet.
I just don't look.
Don't look at this man.
Don't look at him.
Yeah, being in person, his looks have way too much power.
No, he couldn't take my owl theory. It's my omni theory that it really answers everything.
Owl theory.
I think owls are behind everything. I'm gonna keep on that one. Maybe we've got an owl pin set coming back.
Yeah, I did too.
I forgot about it until everybody started hitting me up with all this owl talk, and I was like, it goes far. Maybe we'll have to do an owl episode, and it's just me with a very tight tinfoil hat as the circulation slowly leaves my brain.
I'll come and dress as an owl.
All right. Well, this is an audio podcast. That's just for you.
That's just for us. That is solely for us.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting how far back this goes, and it's even more interesting if you even want to, if you're a skeptic, right, and you don't want to believe in this stuff. It's still really interesting from a story perspective to listen to how the Loch Ness Monster goes from some of these potential origins to where it has been in recent decades to where it is now. I think it's a really interesting evolution of a story from folklore to scientific exploration. But these occasional sightings thereafter, right, kind of inspire the Scottish folklore because of their recurring inclusion of sea monsters. The Scottish being so close to the sea, and the sea being so big, open, huge, and mysterious. Obviously, there are a lot of folk tales and folklore from many cultures that are seafaring about monsters under the depths of various types.
We talked about how big the water was, but do we talk about how big like the Loch Ness Monster is supposed to be?
We have not actually.
Okay, because the thing that's crossing my mind right now is, as time has passed, technology advances. If the Loch Ness Monster is even decently big enough, right? We're not talking like 3 feet long.
We're not talking about Jersey Devil here.
Yeah. Then you'd think it would show up on some type of sonar if there's a boat going through it. If boats go through that, like,
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into a little bit of the search for Nessie and the investigation.
Oh, I like that.
We're getting close. But Christian, that's a good point. Just while we're talking about the background, do we have like, I know it's hard to say because these are all sightings and so they're all very roughed out, these estimates. But do we have a rough estimate from various sightings over the years?
From what we were reading, we couldn't find anything, and I'm still reading just to check. We couldn't find anything that was giving actual numbers. Just everybody said it was of enormous size. But yeah, the sightings were so quick and fleeting, nobody was able to get like an actual estimate measurement.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I assume it'd be hard to, right? Because if you see it, you see it. But you're only going to see like a piece of it out of the water, and like it's like a shark, and you go, oh, that's a big old fin. But like, how big is the shark really?
It's also and there are photos that I'm going to show you here in a second, Frey. But it's interesting because when you see something in the middle of a body of water and the photo only contains it and the waves, you don't really have any idea of scale.
Yeah,
you have nothing to compare it to, and obviously, natural wind-swept waves have a general size, right? So you can kind of go off that, but if it's making its own waves because of movement or whatever, or I don't know, we'll
it just wouldn't be accurate,
right?
Like, it would be such a wide estimate.
But we talked about a few hundred AD. We're going to jump all the way up to the 20th century. In 1933, there was a road that was completed next to Loch Ness. It actually ran parallel to the loch, and this increased the foot traffic, the car traffic, whatever. It increased traffic along the lake. And so this gave people more opportunity to see the lake and perhaps have sightings. In fact, on May 2nd of 1933, the Inverness Courier reported on a couple that had seen, quote, the creature disport itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron, end quote. Obviously, folks of a different time, because that was poetic as hell.
Yeah.
Very New York Timesian of them.
A whole minute?
Yeah, they were saying they basically saw this creature moving and undulating at the surface of the water and churning up the waves a little bit and whatnot. In this sighting, I should clarify, the article came out in May, but the sighting took place the month prior, in April of 1933. In addition to this, they also said that the enormous creature sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing steamer. So that gives you somewhat of an idea of its size, a passing steamer being, variable in its size in and of itself, but obviously
but
hefty.
Large.
Yeah. Not something like a jet ski, There was another couple that actually said that they soon saw something after that April 1933 sighting, and they claimed that they were driving on this new road when, quote, a dragon-like animal or prehistoric monster, end quote, crossed the street right in front of their car and disappeared into the lake. So they said they saw it on the road.
On the land?
Yeah, slithering about. And then
This is getting crazy. Okay, so with this first sighting, do we know if at this point the Loch Ness Monster has been just like popularized at that point?
It's hard to say. If I were to
I think it'd be pretty hard to answer that.
Yeah.
Like local tales, it's a local thing.
I think it's a local thing. But as you're going to soon find out, I think this is really what kicked it off into the modern era. This is what kicked up a lot of articles, a lot of attention in the media, which then, as we've seen in previous other cryptid topics and supernatural topics, really only serve to serve it up on a platter and send this out into the masses.
Okay. I was just curious, and I know that was a hard question to answer, simply because, like, if by this point they were like, hey, come check out the Loch Ness Monster and all that kind of stuff, then it's like, well, yeah, now it's,
this of course, you're primed to see
an avalanche of all these sightings, as I air quote.
Right.
But if it wasn't as popular, then I don't know. I mean, that's just me being me, just goes, all right, I give this a little bit of like leeway instead of just completely doubting it off my mind. Just like, hey, maybe they did see something, right? It's like, because at that point, there's less to gain.
Right.
There's more to gain from it. I'm just like, I'm so skeptical.
Right. What makes it so interesting is that this road was new, and so this otherwise lightly populated area suddenly had a little bit more opportunity for foot traffic. And so when someone in this relatively modern era comes through and they say, I've seen something wild, they go, wow, that rings a bell. That's kind of clicking with some of this folklore, this old stuff. And so maybe there's something to this. And actually, the London newspapers, obviously of England, started to send correspondents up to Scotland, which really kicked off this media phenomenon. And they were offering a £20,000 reward. So £20,000 in the early 30s.
Now you're really like just putting gasoline on a very, very small fire.
Oh, yeah.
Just baby embers, and you're just like dousing it.
100%. They're looking for evidence of this creature, stories, whatever they can. And if 20K is on the line, I'm sitting there thinking, what can I make up convincingly enough to get this money?
Most definitely. And the thing is, like, I'm not the kind of person that would be like, all right, let me cook up this story and go. But it's crossing my mind at the very least.
It's crossing our mind.
You know what I mean?
Know that there's people out there that were doing it.
100%.
Yeah.
But see, like, that's interesting because not only, like, that's not even like a slow, gradual, like, increase in popularity. That is, was it the media correspondent, right?
Yeah, various newspapers in the London area sent up their correspondents and stuff.
Various newspapers send out correspondence.
I believe so.
That's insane because right off the bat, right? Like, you're just like, okay, there's something like, whether or not this exists, there's something valid to this whole thing, right?
Right.
If you have the media that's like, all right, we're going to devote time and resources to it, and then throw money at it. Oh my goodness! Like, what a spark!
Yeah, and I don't really think that the London papers cared much because they're like, I'm just looking to sell papers. I mean, look at News Today. It's just a hot headline and move on. Like, it's all dramatic, and it's not. It's not really looking for what's the truth behind it all. What's the journalistic integrity's ruined. I was born in the 1700s, by the way. I don't know.
But I mean, still, regardless,
certainly
though,
sends people off.
Like nowadays, if you're just like, oh, there was a monster in this lake, you're not going to get the news to send out correspondence to multiple news outlets to send out people to take a look at this. And, like, that's a waste of time. What evidence do you have? Yeah. So for all of these news outlets to show up, is automatically going to spark so much interest with so many people.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that is kind of the origin, or the loose origin, of Nessie, how it came to be so popular, kind of some of the main origins, I should say, that I think this story leans on as its genesis. But moving on from that, let's talk about how people investigated this, because clearly scientists around the world are going to be very interested in this, real or otherwise. They're trying to get in there and proving it accordingly. Because if it's real, there's something to learn. If it's false, hey, at least we tried to learn something. So after this news story was released, curiosity increased across the world. Amateur investigators on through scientists and everything in between, journalists, spent decades launching expeditions to try and figure out what was lurking below this waterline to figure out if Nessie was real. While no concrete evidence of the Loch Ness Monster was found, sonar operators were able to detect some unknown form of large objects moving around the lake.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. I was like, something's going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to come up that makes me go, oh, damn it.
I remember as a kid, people dragging sonars and other things along the bottom and trying to figure out.
There's the technology I was talking about. Like, why are we not dumping some of our tech into this?
Exactly.
And they did. Ooh.
So the way the sonar works, for the sake of those at home and the task force, it's a tool that, I mean, you might have heard of sonar, like the beep, beep. It basically, it uses sound propagation to navigate, measure distance, and communicate with, or even detect objects, basically. When you hear the beep, beep, beep in your movies and in a submarine, that's basically sound waves going out, hitting an object, coming back and registering. And from that information, it can basically triangulate, or probably the wrong word, but figure out what's out there. And when you scan the bed of a lake, you can start to figure out what the bottom of the seafloor or a lake or whatever looks like. And by doing this, you can also capture, are there objects in the midst of things? Are there spikes in the verticality? That means you're seeing either a large fish, a large seafaring creature, whatever.
Or another submarine like the Hunt for October.
Exactly.
What?
My favorite part is when Fredo like goes, yes, or this, and I slowly look over to Christian, and then he cracks
Every time.
What do you mean every time?
You always reference movies from the 90s. Like,
I just don't.
Dude, I've been trying.
You understand what movie I'm talking about every time.
Every time, dude.
It's just 80s and 90s.
I love how
Great
often
movies.
we reference movies, though. I think pop culture references are like the #1 references we make. It's my favorite. But a little bit more about that sonar stuff. You know, Boston's Academy of Applied Sciences launched such an expedition in 1975, led by MIT's Professor Robert Rines and Harold Edgerton, who worked closely with the LNIB. There's a whole bureau for this, baby, the Loch Ness Phenomenon Investigation Bureau.
Are you serious?
Yeah, baby. I hope they get some good, healthy grant money, because
I kind of love that.
I do too.
Just because of the fact that, like, yeah, right. If people are saying there's these weird things happening, or there's this anomaly out there, this like natural weird anomaly, like, why throw some money at it, man? Let's investigate. Let's get some. And that's what I like about this, right? Where it brings me joy every time when it's like we're bringing in professionals, we're bringing people, like we're non-professionals, and we're throwing our technology at it and some money at it to really thoroughly investigate. And like that's the kind of stuff that I love to see, and we're getting that here.
It's science in action. Even if you're a skeptic and you're like, that's hooey, it's nice to see that actual. I don't know how big this bureau is, to be honest.
Right, it could literally be 2 people. Right,
or a kid in his bedroom. But it's like it's nice to see that these things materialize with which to test the bounds of our reality as we know it. That's the whole point, I suppose.
But I seriously, I love that. I love the fact that like we have professionals that are also getting involved, and people are just trying to see like what's up, what's going on with this whole situation. Because I bring it right back to the Amazon. We discover so many different species of bugs and stuff like that, like every year, and it's just like, what about the water, man? Like, there's so much of the ocean.
Oh, for sure.
That is just unexplored. And
Even
I'll keep saying this every other episode because it's just so fascinating to me.
Even the giant squid. I mean, in my lifetime alone, went from folklore, not sure, to like, okay, we have some tangible evidence.
Yep.
Kind of your favorite.
I love it.
It's one of those Ziploc baggies that just says tangible, and it's got a squid beak in it. But like now we have video and stuff, and it's just really cool to see that stuff evolve.
Yeah.
Now, can we get that with Nessie? I hope. But this expedition combined sonar technology that we talked about with underwater photography, and they captured a photo that showed a rough image of a giant flipper belonging to an underwater creature. I have that photo for you here now. And again, as always, for those listening at home, you can either watch on youtube.com/redwebpod if you want that imagery delivered right to your face. We have the podcast there now, or head over to twitter.com/redwebpod, where we upload some of our key graphics that we reference in this show. But here you go, Fredo. That top image there is
okay, I'll be honest. Which way am I? Oh, I'm looking at it this way.
There you go.
All right.
It's the sonar photography. This is the large fin that's supposed to be part of this creature.
Okay, see, now
what are you feeling? What are you thinking?
I mean, like, okay, so this is money, time, and technology put behind it. And this is like the people that were from MIT.
Yeah. This is led by MIT professors in conjunction with Boston's Academy of Applied Sciences.
See, and like, obviously, anyone's capable of lying, but it's less likely so because they have their reputations on the line.
Absolutely.
And looking at this, I'm just going, ooh, that looks like something. I mean, that looks like, it looks like a fin.
It does.
It really does. And like, it lines up with what you think the Loch Ness Monster's fin and the side of the body looks like. And, oh, man. Here's the thing, too. It's just like, my mind is going different places, and one of the places is going, it's like, how do they know that this isn't just like the side of a rock or a reef or some, I don't know, chunky fish? You know what I mean? Like, but I'm assuming at this point, right, this isn't, or at least I haven't been told that this is newer technology. This is technology that like we've used for some time.
Right.
So I would think that some of the kinks have been ironed out in terms of like, well, reefs show up as this, and like rocks show up as this, etc. And so, man, this It's like not much, but it's like enough to make me go, ooh, that's something.
Right. Does anything pop out to you? Is there anything that makes you a little bit skeptical at all before we dive further into the analysis of this photo? I'm just curious at your virgin instincts on this, like having not seen this photo. Your virgin reaction, that's what I was looking for.
I mean, it could just be because of like the way the tech is. It just seems like it's so like the way
75. So yeah, this is some old school stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the fin. If I'm looking at it, thinking that the fin is pointing downwards. One side of it really like enlarged itself, right? Like it gets really large on one side, and the other side is so much thinner. It seems so.
So some sort of weird kind of perspective distortion happening?
Where I'm just kind of like, is it? Yeah.
Here's what stands out to me now that I think about it. Now that I look at that image a little closer, it starts to make me wonder, how did you capture something that close to the supposed creature without seeing more of it, or having, people on the boat or people at the scene have some sort of personal experience, right? Like the boat was rocking. I saw the waves, like it just feels like, how do you get the camera that close and not get more? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also like you think that they would have more, and I mean, you have professionals coming in, right? Like there's different layers of technology that they're using to capture any type of evidence, right? It's not just like we brought one camera, and it's like they got sonar, they got cameras in the water, out of the water. Maybe they got people ready to dive, like all these kinds of things, right? And
they're dragging Joe behind on a rope. He's swimming in the back.
He's just fluttering along, just like, yeah, where they at?
I'm looking for Nessie.
I'm gonna kiss it. Yeah, I mean it's right.
I don't
like with anything like this, it's always just like, of course we got like the left toe of the damn monster.
So I don't want to suck the wind out of your sails. I did want to properly analyze this with you because this is a photo I honestly haven't seen before. And so I wanted to actually take the time to discuss this kind of first instincts, because ultimately, as disappointing as it is, this first photo was debunked by author of The Loch Ness Mystery Solved, Robert Binns, and was subsequently confirmed by Adrian Shine, who was a respected longtime investigator of the Loch Ness Monster phenomena. So we have not only some pretty well-respected folks taking this photo, we have some pretty well-respected folks coming over here saying, I think this might be a fake, but ultimately they confirmed that this photo was heavily enhanced to make the muddy sediment-filled floor of the loch appear as if it was in a fin shape.
So that's just the floor?
So ultimately, yeah, apparently this is the floor of the loch, and what happened was, whether they painted out this fin shape or they just found something that was naturally fin shaped and then articulated the photo with contrast, brightness, and whatever to enhance it to convey the illusion that they wanted to convey.
That's insane, because I was like, these are people with reputations. They're less likely to lie, and they lie.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Science is a liar sometimes, and at the end of the day, you got people looking for grant money. I'm being a little cynical, but it's true. Like, if you want to continue having this be your job, you got to come up with something.
There's definitely motive, for sure.
Even if the Loch Ness Monster was real, you got to come up with something if you want it to be funded.
Yeah.
You know?
Damn, I had too much faith in humanity.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. I knew it was completely something that has happened. It can't be that simple, right? And I'm just like, yeah. I'm glad it's debunked, though. Like, it does look like a fin, but I'm just like,
it's better than having something that you're like, is it not? Is it real? Is it fake?
Like, is it I don't know, kelp that's just super magnified or something?
Yeah.
But yeah, debunked. Okay.
Well, to the credit of the team that was actually doing the study, it is yet to be determined. They were not able to determine, in fact, at the time, who was responsible for the enhancement. So it could be that the team themselves was fooled by whoever might have been behind the scenes manipulating this photography.
Or they're just like, I don't know. And they do know.
That's
right?
true.
They're
like,
partially in it.
Did. Yeah.
It's like, it didn't, but we all decided to take this to our graves.
Yeah. But what's interesting too is, you can look at photo manipulation and be like, yeah, it's fake. But in addition to that, I find this more intriguing. The team that debunked this photo pointed out that this supposed flipper here, which does look very much like a flipper, there's a rib running along the middle here, this light
Dude,
portion.
that was the part that was getting me.
Yeah. Well, when you look at other fins in the aquatic biosphere, right, where you look at other animals and other vertebrates in particular in the ocean and in lakes and stuff, this ribbing is unlike that of most fins that you would expect to see. So, and since a lot of creatures, I don't want to pretend I know science and zoology, but basically that this is a strange shape.
Roughly based off of
a similar origin.
Yeah,
right?
it's not like something coming from space where you just go, it could, be made up of anything and any type of shape or form. You like to think that even if it's different in something that's cryptid in on planet Earth, that it at least has some sort of resemblance to like the chemistry.
Right.
Of our
I mean,
creatures.
it doesn't look like it doesn't look like a whale fin, and you would imagine that it would. It doesn't look like a plesiosaur fin. We're going to get into the theory section here soon.
Yeah, I was
but
about to say, like,
we have
it's one
fossils.
of, like, the older dinosaurs.
Doesn't look like that, no.
And the fossils of older dinosaurs too.
Yeah. So that's, to me, a more concrete way, I think, to debunk this. But there are,
Damn,
anyway.
I lack of fish knowledge.
it crops up every now and then, you got to start reading a fish book. Now, in April of 1934, there was a year later now, another picture was captured by a British surgeon, Colonel Robert Wilson, as he was driving along the shore. In what is now the iconic photo of the monster. Fredo, I have it for you now, but everyone at home, task force, if you've heard of Nessie, if you've seen any photo of Nessie, you've seen this photo. It is pretty much the Loch Ness Monster with its neck up out of the water, a little bit of its back hump in the water, and only surrounded by waves and water. So you don't really, again, have any idea of scale here.
Just think of a elephant trunk coming out of the water.
Honestly, yes. That's exactly what that looks like.
An elephant's trunk coming out of the water.
Yeah.
I mean, man, there's just no reference in size, right? Or it's like, this could be 3 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
Could be tiny. We don't know. We really don't. I'm not gonna reference the movie. I'm looking at Chris just like waiting for it. And I'm like, no.
Because you say the most absurd stuff and you just stare at me, and I'm just like, what's coming? What are you gonna say?
But like, man, like it definitely looks like something, but it's just one of those things where I just go, come on, like.
Mm-hmm. My whole life, that was the monster.
Right.
That
same
was
here.
like, oh, whoa.
Like, this is the photo.
Yeah.
And I've known of this photo even before you showing it here to me today. So we're just going to catch the silhouette. There's like no type of detail in it. It's literally just a silhouette of, I mean, I wouldn't be able to tell you if there's any type of fish or aquatic creature that I could think of that has an appendage like this, right? Like,
yeah.
But also, it's like, it just looks so like an elephant trunk coming out of the water. So I'm I'm literally just like, that's gotta be fake. Like, what is?
And you look at the waves too, and that looks like the waves of a calm pool that you dip your toe in.
Yep.
Or it looks like waves from a lake from far away. And either way that you cut it, that either makes this thing extraordinarily tiny, smaller than the Jersey Devil, or like a giant building in the middle of the lake. It's really hard to tell.
It's super hard to tell, and it's just, I don't know. This photo is so iconic, but just like it always has, it doesn't do anything for me. I just go, this tells me nothing.
Mm-hmm. So this photo was, as I mentioned, 1934, quite old. It took 60 years to really come around to this one. Now, we already did this with the previous photo, but let's pull the wind out of the sails just a little bit. In 1994, Wilson's famous photo here, the iconic one here, was revealed to be a hoax plotted by 90-year-old Christian Sperling, who faked the photo. This was alongside Marmaduke Wetherell and Robert Wilson, and they used a toy submarine embellished with a sea serpent head. And thus, you have this photo. Now, that little submarine, that submersible, kind of answers how you have the body here, and then obviously they attach this serpent neck part. But honestly, when I look at the waves, my mind wants to, and again, I'm assuming my mind could be wrong, and now I have hindsight. But looking at this photo, these waves look so tiny, like little baby ripples, that it really shrinks this in my mind, and it does look toy-sized.
So like that actually, like you telling me how this was like not real, that kind of really put into perspective what I was trying to get at, where when you showed me the fin, I go, oh my goodness, like that looks like something. Do I, obviously I'm like, I'm still skeptical of it, but I'm just like, man, I don't know. Like with the iconic Loch Ness Monster photo, I've always had just the instant thought of like, okay, explain to me how this is fake, right? Because I'm always just like, I just don't believe it at all.
Yeah,
I'm just and so that's like, as you were telling me, like that was like, oh yeah, that's the feeling that it is. Like that nails it for me. That labels it for me, where I'm just like, tell me how this is fake, because
your
I
feeling,
don't believe
your gut
this
is
at
now
all.
validated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I'm surprised that this was 1994, because I mean, again, as a child of the 90s, where all the movies were great, I come through that childhood thinking that this was the legitimate photo, and I didn't learn personally that this was a hoax until I saw some sort of, History Channel docuseries around these monsters, and so it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even when I was little, I looked at the photo and went, "How'd they do that?" What? little Fredo just sitting there like, come on now, how'd they do that?
How'd they do that? What's interesting?
Just like me at a magic show. How'd you do that?
How'd they do that? I look back at this kind of fin photo, and what's so intriguing to me about it, I know it's now kind of enhanced and all of that, but what kind of resonates with me is the first few live photos we were able to capture as humans, obviously, of the giant squid, where they put a very low frame rate camera way down in the ocean with a bait, and then you see these wild like tentacles out of the water, like an alien kind of reaching out for it, and that's what this reminds me of. And it's almost like retroactively makes this feel a little bit more like real, but obviously we know it's not.
Yep.
But it gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, the shivers when I think about all the other possible things under the ocean that could just swallow us whole that we don't know about.
So many things that could be buried deep beneath.
Oh man.
Just, yeah.
All of our fresh waterways, all the tunnels underneath our continents that we don't know about.
Yeah, dude, like,
ugh.
That's just a little weird.
But,
a little scary.
Yeah. But coming back to Christian Sperling and this particular photography here, quote, according to Sperling, he had been approached by Wetherell, who wanted him to make a convincing serpent model. Sperling did this, and this model was then photographed in Loch Ness. This picture was then given to Wilson, whose job it was to serve as a credible frontman for the hoax. So there you have it. Now, despite this confession, though, you still have many people who did not want to let that ruin their determination to identify the mysterious sea monster. And I get that. Just because somebody fakes something does not mean that that whole item, that whole idea, that creature, exist. That place, that entity, whatever, doesn't exist, right? So I could go fake a UFO video right now. That doesn't mean that inherently aliens don't exist, right?
Yeah.
It's not, mutually exclusive.
Because they do.
So a lot of people still believe, a lot of people are still looking to identify the sea monster and if it is real. And this determination has survived, as we've kind of discussed now, for centuries. It has been ongoing. And as recently as May of 2018, a geneticist, Professor Neil Gemmell of University of Otago in New Zealand, announced that they are scraping the loch for environmental DNA, or eDNA. This is something I hadn't really heard of, really. And they wanted to prove with this test, once and for all, whether or not the monster exists. Now, for those like myself who don't know about eDNA, it's essentially a way of collecting DNA from the environment rather than an individual organism specifically. So scraping the soil, the seawater, snow, sometimes even the air to capture DNA in those environments.
What the hell?
It's pretty cool.
Imagine like using that. I don't know. Like, this is me with no knowledge whatsoever of any of this, but using that technology, grab DNA at a crime scene.
Oh yeah, see if it's floating about.
Yeah.
I guess what's tough is when you do an environmental DNA scrub, you're kind of, and I'll get into some of the results again here in a sec, but you're really scraping the environment. So let's say there's a missing persons case or a homicide happened in a small apartment. You scrub the air, the environment, whatever. You could end up capturing DNA from all of the residents of that building due to air conditioning, circulation, due
Damn,
to foot
you're
traffic.
right.
So this is a good.
It's too good.
It's almost too good. So this is a good process for identifying what's in the biosphere,
Right,
what's
yeah.
happening in the ecosystem, but not so much for the specificity of an individual, for sure. But that's a really good thought. Really, really
It's
interesting.
very interesting.
Yeah. But before we get into the theories and going into some more of the details around eDNA and everything like that, I wanted to end the kind of investigation because, as I mentioned earlier, newspapers in London were sending many, many reporters up to Scotland to get the best scoop. You got to get that money.
I mean, if you do get that scoop, though, like, that is game changing.
Yeah.
Like, for the person that got it, all the way up the chain, right? Like,
Mhm.
everybody wins.
I'm also surprised, by the way. I just want to, as an aside,
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to reference Jurassic Park. Mr. DNA. I thought you were gonna go there with that. Just like,
Look,
just
look.
I just want to burn a reference
Right
before it happens.
Look. What do you mean burn a reference before it happens? Don't take that from me.
Once we're gonna get to a spot where we dive a little deeper, and you're gonna be like, "Well, DNA, Dino DNA."
Oh, what the hell?
Go ahead and burn that candle all the way down to the
cut
bottom.
me off at the pass here.
All right. Did you know this was a movie podcast, ladies and gentlemen? Do you ever wonder what a Loch Ness Monster would sound like? By the way, I'm still at home. If you were listening to the ads from last week, I'm just addressing why yours truly, Trevor, might sound a little different. But I wonder what a Loch Ness Monster would sound like. Let me give it a try. I feel like that's pretty accurate, but if you disagree, I want to hear your Loch Ness Monster. Tweet us at RedWebPod or hit us up on YouTube. Same handle if you prefer, youtube.com/RedWebPod, where we upload there now as well. We hitting all the platforms for this show, so that way, no matter where you like to listen to us, we're there for you, pal, no matter what. Also, we have merch at store.roosterteeth.com. I know I have been talking about a cryptid pin set, super relevant because we are talking about the Loch Ness Monster today, and they're coming. Due to logistical concerns in the world, if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of things going down with logistics and shipments being delayed. Unfortunately, those pins, they're ready to go as far as design is concerned. I think they're very cool, but they will be coming, I believe, early into next year. So probably January-ish sometime is what we're hearing. But outside of the pins, we do have some other things coming, a really, really cool jacket and some other peripheral items that I think you should check out. Just always stay tuned. We'll be letting you know here on the show. But yeah, as always, no pressure. If you want to support the show, that's one way to do it directly. And I want to let you know that we have stuff coming down the pipeline. Always just want to keep you abreast on what's happening here at Red Web. But with that said, let's talk about some of our fantastic sponsors for today. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Voodoo Ranger. Voodoo Ranger is the beer that doesn't take itself too seriously, made for people who don't take themselves too seriously either. It's a beer that you can choose based on the can design alone and trust that no matter what, it'll taste incredible. And truly, after all the seriousness we've been through, who couldn't use a little delight right now, huh? Because if there's one thing that Voodoo Ranger does take seriously, it's how great their beers taste. They take it very seriously. It's like a science to them, and they do it well. Their Captain Dynamite is locked, stocked, and fully hopped. It's a hazy IPA that explodes with tropical citrus flavors and aromas, and the Imperial IPA is a rare blend of choice hops and complex, rich flavors. I have enjoyed a plethora of their flavors. I almost can't even pick a favorite, but I do like the Captain Dynamite one because, listen, it says it here in the ad, but I will say it myself. We at the office have had the opportunity to try so many different Voodoo Ranger beers thanks to many ongoing sponsorships, and they always are great. So if you just like the can and the way it looks, they have very cool styles, very cool colors, you can go off that. If you like the names, if you like how they describe each beers, they're always very accurate. But again, you can't go wrong, truly. So visit at Voodoo Ranger on Instagram and Twitter if you want to learn more and live rangerously. This episode of Red Web is also sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? That's where therapy can really make a difference. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's not a crisis line or self-help or anything like that. It's professional therapy done securely online. BetterHelp offers a broad range of expertise that might not be available locally, and their service is available worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist, and you'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to worry about sitting in an uncomfortable waiting room like in traditional therapy. So visit betterhelp.com/redweb, that's better, H-E-L-P, and join the over 200,000 people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Plus, we have a special offer for the Task Force listeners out there. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/redweb. Treat yourself, treat your mind. It's a very serious matter. I take it seriously, and I hope you do too. And let them know we sent you. And with all that said, why don't we dive deep into the Loch Ness, looking again for the monster. Coming back to the newspapers, in 1933, we have London's very own illustrious, top-of-the-line Daily Mail. A little bit of inside humor for you Londoners. They hired a hunter by the name of Marmaduke Wetherell, who was also one of the people who helped fake the famous photo, if you recognize the name, to find Nessie. Hey, fakester, snap, snap, get over here. Help us find. This is the year before the photo.
Oh, okay.
So don't worry.
I was about to be like,
they didn't know yet.
What?
Yeah, no, they didn't know yet. But it turns out he was one of the people that faked the photo. But hey, Daily Mail's looking at this guy. Help us find Nessie. Wetherell said that he found footprints along the lake's shore that resembled those of a four-legged animal, and wrote a story dramatically titled, and in all caps, because caps lock is cruise control for cool, quote, "Monster of Loch Ness is not legend, but a fact." So immediately, we can look back with hindsight. We know this man's just kind of like up in the budget a little bit. Trying to get a little fancy.
Yeah.
Sensationalizing. That's the word. That's the word I couldn't remember last week.
Yeah.
That's the word.
I do remember that moment.
I'm working on my vocabulary ever since I said, what was it? Nefarious.
Yeah.
1,000 times too many. I'm trying to broaden the Red Web dictionary a little bit. But hey, these footprints apparently actually existed, so plaster casts were made of them. I had no idea about this genuinely until we did this research, because that's very much something that you'd hear in a Bigfoot case. Like there's a foot there. You pour plaster in it, it solidifies. You can then pull it out of the ground, get an impression, and take that to some person who will analyze it. Now, they took plaster casts of these footprints. They then sent them to the British Natural History Museum. Beautiful building, beautiful place, which reported that the tracks were in fact made by that of a hippopotamus, which is weird, because then I said, how did hippos get up into Scotland? Who's got a wild pet running around stomping?
A wild hippo.
And as cute as it was, the only news result about a hippopotamus in Scotland was of that of a pygmy hippopotamus that was born in one of their zoos, and it was an adorable creature. But it's worth mentioning, hippos are native to Africa almost exclusively, I believe. When I looked it up, they were throughout Africa mostly. So
I mean,
maybe he faked it.
We know that this person is capable and not capable, did fake things, right? So at that point, it's just like, okay, this animal's footprint, and then I'll try and like muddy up the corners or something like that, and then they're just like, oh, it's a hippo.
Like, did he make the cast as well, or did somebody else? Like, there's some loose ends in there that help cut corners.
Anything tied to this person is just like,
throw it out, burn it.
Yeah,
or maybe like some people carry around rabbit's foot on a keychain as luck. This guy's going for the big luck. He's like, if I'm looking for a Loch Ness Monster, I need mega luck. And so he, on his keychain, pulls out his keys, his Prius keys, boop, boop. On that, he's got a hippo foot hanging and dangling.
Just dang?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Also, like, this guy's just finding stuff left and right. You know what I mean?
Properly sourced, don't worry. Lived a full life. Harvested at its natural death. The
hippo's foot.
Yeah. There's not a peg-legged hippo.
No.
Running around Okay, let's move on. Well, shoot. I was going to say the Amazon, not the right continent, but that reminds me, before we go into the theories, you mentioned the Amazon earlier because of how vast it is and how there's so many things yet to be discovered there. Species, peoples, places. I wonder, are there cryptids in the Amazon?
Oh my God.
There has to be, right?
Gotta be.
And this is going to sound like a funny name, but no joke. There is a Bigfoot cousin or like parallel called the stink ape, something of that nature, because it is a very hairy ape-like creature, very much like Bigfoot, but apparently has a very rancid smell to it. And I don't know if that is Amazon or if that's
insane.
Other like swampy, foresty areas.
A stinky ape running around?
Yeah.
There's the skunk ape.
Skunk ape! That's what it is.
What?
Stink ape. I messed it up, but you know, I haven't listen, I haven't uttered
Look,
those words
stink ape
since like 5th grade. No joke. I did a report
sounds,
on Bigfoot, Yeti, and stink ape.
Stink ape sounds
damn it.
cooler than skunk ape, though.
I mean, neither is very cool.
No,
though.
not at all. It's all bottom tier, but like, you know.
Oh,
my goodness. Oh, a tier list.
We need to make a tier list
yeah,
of
we
cryptids,
do, bro.
dude. You know, we've been talking about icebergs, and maybe we do a cryptid iceberg, but I want to do a cryptid tier list. Maybe some bonus content for the YouTube channel.
That's a YouTube video right there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Skunk ape, just for clarification, is said to reside in southeastern U.S., namely Florida.
Of course.
Oh, come on, bro.
That's what, you know, when Bigfoot's getting old and mangy, he's like, you were just like us humans. He likes to retire to Florida. Yeah.
Oh,
when he's lived a long, healthy, stinky life.
That place.
He makes his way down to Florida where he will reside and stink up the unit. But with that, so let's dive into some theories, huh?
Before you get in there, I looked up some clarification on the hippo feet.
Yes.
It is thought that the tracks were made with an umbrella stand or an ashtray that had a hippo leg as a base. Not that a hippo was wandering around Scotland.
The Scots go hard. They had an actual hippo's foot as the base of an ashtray or like
a lamp
case or
a lamp or umbrella stand.
What?
And they just walked around and pop, pop, pop.
Jeez. I don't even want to go in the building that was sourced from. It's like Ace Ventura 2 in that place. Just animals all over the walls.
Sorry, are you bringing movies into this?
Oh, excuse me. Pardon me about that. Christian, I know you hate film. Excuse me. That was so slick, so smooth, dude. I didn't even notice I did that. Yeah, that's wild. That's, you know, I guess worse have happened, you know. Poor animals over there. Anyway, let's talk about some theories regarding Nessie. And I think all of these theories we've in some way or another kind of lightly touched on, but I'd like to dive in a little deeper. Theory number one, a very popular one, is that the Loch Ness Monster is actually a dinosaur.
Yep.
Somehow trapped in this area or what have you. But referring to the 1934 famous photography that we talked about earlier, coming from this is really where this theory gets its legs. Looking at this photo, it shows a dinosaur-like creature with a long neck emerging from the water. Again, you have to forget that this was debunked in '94 because you have 60 years of theorizing that we're talking about that's coming from this. This led a lot of people to believe that Nessie was perhaps the only survivor of the long-extinct Plesiosaurus. If you're familiar with the YouTube video like Charlie the Unicorn or whatever, it's a plesiosaur. Right, that's in there. I know Christian doesn't like film, so I thought that might tickle him.
It's a Leopleurodon is what he references.
Excuse me, let's just move on.
Oh
You're right.
Oh my God.
You're right. Okay, we found this man's flavor.
There we go. Now we know what he likes.
Charlie
you're right.
Unicorn in 90s movies, nothing else. It's allowed on this.
But yeah, with regard to the Plesiosaurus in particular, not the Leopleurodon, you're right, wrong dino. But these dinos were thought to have died off with the rest of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. So you're wondering, okay, how is this dinosaur making it into the common era, let alone this century? A lot of people theorize, and I'm just kind of riffing now from my own memory, it's not here in my notes, but a lot of people theorize that throughout the ages, water levels have moved up and down, and various channels have opened and closed, and that there might have been a way for these ancient creatures to make their way inland in Scotland. But over time, you know, whether they nested there and then moved out or migrated in some way, at some point the water channels closed it off, thus enabling it to become a freshwater source of some kind, and therefore trapping either one or a small handful of these plesiosaurs in this loch. And then somehow, obviously you have to let your mind wander a little bit, but somehow they then were able to perpetuate either their species or just live a very, very long time to make it to the modern days. That's kind of how people have theorized this to be.
Yeah, I would just think though, like a creature that large and with enough to, you know, make at least one family's worth, that either more evidence would pop up or it would it's large enough to somewhat change the environment. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So,
and I mean, this area is a pretty well historically documented area going very far back. Europe, African areas, Middle East. But this area in particular, you know, Scotland, there's a long history of humankind there. A lot of written history, a lot of storytelling. And so, yes, sure, the idea of Loch Ness does have some tentpole moments in time. But again, with this theory in particular, if there is a surviving dinosaur, you would imagine that there might be a stronger thread of storytelling coming out of history.
There'd be, I don't know, something, right? Like low population of fish in that area where it should be higher, or
an impact, like you said, to the ecosystem. You know, this thing might eat itself to starvation if it's in a trapped loch, right? And
talking about
just eat the fish supply down,
right? A dinosaur that evaded extinction.
Bones. Where are the bones?
I know you're going with this.
No, that's where that's
Is that where it went?
That's where it went.
It
was one step.
Back to the lake.
It was one step. Take me further.
Thought you were gonna go
Hold
back
my
to
hand, guide me
to the lake.
Oh, Skeleton Lake.
Yeah,
lots of bones there.
Yeah, I got a lot.
But
of
you know,
bones
if this thing is in the you think this creature's 65 million years old?
No.
So you know, there's got to be some, just
me.
like Bigfoot. There's got to be something out there. One of them that's at least passed away. Where are the bones?
That's what I'm saying.
The cryptids all just eat their own bones. Oh, Papa's dead.
They just have a cryptid lawyer that just gets rid of the evidence. Yeah.
The lawyer rolls him up in a rug and just takes him to another loch.
Yeah, paid well.
That's all that matters. But yeah, you know, like it's theorized that again, to extrapolate further, that this Loch Ness monster came through the River Ness sometime in the past 10,000 years alone. Because, well, let's just cut to the chase. This is a very cold lake, and in the recent ice age, this lake was supposedly, or this loch rather, was supposedly frozen over solid. And so, if you combine those facts with the idea of dinosaurs and reptiles and the fact that plesiosaurs were thought to be cold-blooded, it doesn't really seem likely that a cold-blooded creature would be able to survive in a it's just barely over freezing temps year-round. So unless some sort of dramatic level of evolution occurred in a tight time frame. I mean, again, we're talking millions of years, and this little window of ice age-ness happens in the last 10,000 years, right?
It's just so highly unlikely,
it's a big wrinkle.
Right?
There's
there's so many like far-fetched things that need to come together.
Right. Now let's come back to Professor Neil Gemmell. They were, the one conducting the eDNA hunt.
Gimme.
Now he said, quote, "We can't find any evidence of a creature that's remotely related to that in our environmental DNA sequence data. So, sorry, I don't think the plesiosaur idea holds up based on the data that we have obtained." End quote. Now, for you, Fredo, for your mind, for your brain mind, here's that photo I showed you before, a little bit wider, less cropped. And here is a plesiosaur. And so you could imagine, you could see how these, could be misconstrued. How if you were to believe that this photo is real, that it would be that creature. Because they are basically the same.
I mean, look, growing up, I was like, if this thing is real, it is that type of dinosaur.
Yeah.
It's got the fin and everything like that. But, I mean, it's a fake. So that's the crazy thing. So, like, in my mind, and I guess in also, like, media's mind, like, Loch Ness is this shape. Right?
It's that dinosaur now.
It's that
officially.
dinosaur.
Right.
Which is crazy because this is not real.
Exactly.
This is fake. So
not only
we
is
don't really know what the hell it looks like.
Hundo. Because, like, not only do we not know what this thing looks like, not only is that thing fake, you got to remember, like, these are the things I like to do for you, Tess, where you got to put yourself into the minds of those kind of as this thing was unfolding, because we all have a load of preconceived notions around this. We go, this is what the Loch Ness Monster looks like. It's this Plesiosaurus or whatever. But the folks that kind of came up with this idea of this body shape only went off of this neck out of the water sort of story and these carvings on the stone. And so I think it's almost kind of taking the past, taking dinosaur fossils and validating a story. And so they have kind of become one and the same.
Yeah, to me too, it's just like, man, there's not like a, I don't know, it's hard to find like a shadow of a doubt that this isn't like fake. Seems like a bunch of lies.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk a little bit more about this eDNA scrub.
Bunch of true lies.
Bunch of true lies. You're just smirking. He's going to TV shows now. How do you feel?
Let's just move
Oh,
on.
yep. Welcome to Red Web. Let's just move on.
Did you know what I was referencing?
I did.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm part of the problem.
You're low key antagonizing him in your own way. You're like encouraging it. But yeah, so like we have some results of the eDNA hunt in this theory, and we have some more in the next one. And the next theory is that Nessie may simply just be an eel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like an existing creature, just abnormally large, I guess. That's a big old eel, though.
It would have to be a big eel, but remember, this was tiny. We don't know scale when it's out there in the middle of the water or underwater or whatever. So it could be that we're just misconstrued. We really bulked and hulked this eel up into like, you know, he's got maybe some unfortunate...
A reverse Jersey Devil, you know what I'm saying?
Reverse Jersey Devil sort of situation. But before we get into that, Jillian, Christian, and myself, we're talking about this concept around eels. I don't know if you've heard this, where people for many decades, in fact centuries, have been trying to figure out how eels reproduce. Many people have dissected them and were unable...
Do we not know?
We do know.
Okay.
But for a long, long time, and I think the average person still might not know.
I don't know.
Like a lot of dissections happen to basically say like, how do they reproduce? There are no sex organs in this eel. And I'm going to not do the explanation any real justice, but this is coming courtesy of Hank Green. And basically, the eel life cycle is very complex. There are many dramatic stages of life, much like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, etc. That's just a two-stage thing. Eels start out as these little tiny worm-looking things.
Yeah.
I think called glass eels. Eventually, they turn into... there's various stages of eel, and they're all eel-like, but eventually they get to the eel that we all know and love. And we all love eels.
Let's say who's loving eels, bro? What
Shout out to the eel lovers out
who's
there.
Out here is
eel
like,
pin set coming soon with
I
a
love
full
me a
life
cool-
cycle.
I love me an eel, man.
Yeah, just like
What
that.
kind of animal
Look
are
at him
you in the
slithering
animal
around.
kingdom? I'm an eel.
I'm an eel. I'm a snake that stayed in the water.
I'm a water snake.
But yeah, basically they have a very complex life cycle, and there's an answer to it. But they migrate a lot all over the world. They go out to the Caribbean and then they come back out. And it's like there's basically a lot of question marks. Like, whoa, where do they come from? Do eels just exist? Because they're like they don't have sex organs. So how do they reproduce? And it's since been figured out. If you want to know more about it, don't listen to people like me. Go listen to Hank Green and others that actually know what they're talking about.
So wait, how do they reproduce?
Basically, I don't know if it's one of those stages is where they are able to reproduce
Like
and lay
actually have
eggs
the
and everything,
organ,
and then they
like
move
sex
on.
organs, stuff like that?
Yeah. And then they move on and become the like proper adult thing.
Do they
and-
just like rub up together or something?
I don't know.
Oh,
I think it's one of their life stages or something.
got
and
it.
then like, you know, they all go to the Caribbean and have a giant like species orgy, and then they spread back out and go put their eggs elsewhere.
Interesting.
There's totally a zoologist out there just shaking their head,
God, this
and I
guy.
apologize for Fredo.
Yeah.
I apologize about
Hey,
him.
sorry.
But yeah, let's talk about Nessie being an eel in particular, because I think it's interesting, and it is the most commonly talked about theory, as well as having the most supporting evidence and being the easiest to
There's
justify.
evidence behind this? Okay.
This is where we're going to really dive into that eDNA test. But researchers in New Zealand have tried to catalog all living species in the loch by extracting that DNA from water samples. They found no shark, no catfish, no sturgeon DNA in their sampling, and that might sound specific, but those are the creatures that one would expect to be in the water. However, what scientists did find was a very, very significant amount of eel DNA. Eel DNA was found at almost every location sampled, so it stands to reason that there would be quite a number of eels throughout the loch to kind of follow. So it could be possible, right, that we are confusing these eels in their various forms and various sightings with the idea of a Loch Ness Monster.
Oh, so you're saying like the different stage of an eel could be misconstrued as this Loch Ness Monster.
No, I just think that I might have misspoken. I think the fact that if there are a bunch of eels in this body of water and people are coming to the lake looking for an eel-like monster, if they see one, they might be like, that's Nessie.
The Loch Ness Monster.
But it's
just an
actually
eel.
one of what seems to be a number of eels based on how
Yeah.
prolific their DNA is.
I can see why that's the leading theory, because it goes back towards that a really cool piece of tech. That's the DNA scan thing.
That eDNA stuff?
The eDNA stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's basically just an environmental DNA scrub. And
yeah, like that's so awesome.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, if that's what they picked up, right? Like,
right.
I don't know what else like that. Now, I can see why that's a popular theory.
Yeah.
Right, because it's like we have this cool eDNA scanner device, and it's picking up all the DNA and the little bits, and it's picking up a ton of eel.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so weird. I guess I would never really expect there to be eels in Scotland. But again, as I kind of lightly mentioned, very poorly, eels are a mysterious creature, and we still have yet to know a lot about them. Or at least us regular folk.
I'm not even going to pretend to think I know about eels and what they be doing.
Yeah.
Do eels bite people?
Oh, yeah. Eels bite. Eels shock. There's the electric eels.
Yeah, the electric eels.
They can pull up some charges.
See, here's the thing then. Like, who's to say that wasn't like what the priest saw was an eel biting somebody?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
I'm just imagining somebody runs out of the water, eel attached to the thigh, and the quintessential slapping it on the chairs to make it like very comical slapstick.
They see like
and the
an
priest
ankle
goes,
come
"Halt!"
up. Yeah.
And then it just like
Back!
let go because
And
it's
the
like,
eel
listen, I'm
goes,
just
"All right."
eel.
Yeah.
Back, heathen.
The eel's like,
It's so
"Okay."
huge. It's 2 feet long and it's already let go. I let it. I released
But then,
it. Fiend.
yeah, and then you go back and you start talking your tail, and it's like it was the tentacle of a creature, or the fin, or the long neck of some creature that bit. It's
and he's like, remember, I saved you all.
Yeah.
So
convert.
Yeah. But juvenile eels, coming back to the idea of eels and their life cycle, we have juvenile eels at this particular stage known as elvers. These elvers, this stage of eels, they arrive in lochs after migrating more than 31,000 miles or 5,000 kilometers. And they come from the Sargasso Sea near the Bahamas, as I was kind of talking about earlier. And once they arrive, the animals spawn and lay eggs, which would explain the vast amount of eel DNA that was being picked up so frequently due to their large population. So what's really funny to me is that there is this kind of like low-key mystery around eels and how they propagate and where they come from.
Yeah.
Do they just exist? Have they always existed? Are they immortal? Or did they just somehow spawn?
No, I don't think they're immortal.
They're not. And there again, there is a scientific explanation here, but I love that their mystery is tangled with the loch.
Yeah.
I love that it's like Nessie and eels go hand in hand.
I would bet that majority of the people listening are just like, what? They're tied to each other. Like,
I'm tickled. I am so tickled by this.
I would never think that.
Is this why maybe Jillian was talking about that as she was putting this outline together, Christian?
No, I think that was coincidence because this was Gracie.
Oh, this was Gracie?
Yeah, I think it was just pure coincidence.
But yeah, so these elvers come here, and this is where they spawn and lay eggs, and there you have it. They don't just spontaneously exist. But let's talk a little bit more about the DNA, as I was teasing earlier.
Right.
Badger, deer, rabbit, vole, and various different bird DNA was also found in the loch doing this environment DNA scrub.
Is it because they're just over
it's just because they exist. Yeah, they're just because they're in the environment.
Out of it and dying.
100%. Doing well. Yeah.
Yeah.
They defecate and die. Tis the life cycle. But I mean, sheep, cattle, dogs, humans, all sorts of animals. So you know that this analysis is going to capture, and this is probably why you wouldn't want to use it in a homicide case, right? A crime case. But it's capturing anything and anyone that is even lightly in contact with this lake. So very good sampling. And so it stands to reason, again, that if there was a monster living permanently in the loch, that you would grab DNA that either A, you're finding something that is unknown to you, you have a DNA sequence that doesn't match anything on your records, or B, you're picking up on something that is very, very similar to something, maybe like an eel, but it's just a little bit different.
Yeah,
so to imply that you discovered a new species. But yeah, this theory makes a lot of sense to me in combination with what we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next theory. But I always like to combine these. There's a psychological phenomenon known as expectant attention. And so I'll expand on that further, but when you go to the lake or the loch and you're expecting a monster, I'm a sightseer, a tourist, whatever, I'm out there.
Yeah.
If I see an eel, I'm primed and ready, baby, to
Right?
go,
Yep.
oh, I've seen it.
Your mind is already there, like halfway there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that kind of piece of the next theory in conjunction with this one, to me, makes
That's a
this
solid
really
theory.
Yeah.
It's just eel.
Yeah. In fact, I have a video that I want to show you.
Okay.
And if we can post this on our Twitter page, we will as a separate post. It might be a copyright issue, so if you don't see it there, probably that. But the Ness District Salmon Fishery Board captured a video where you can even see a very large eel-like creature. I imagine it is just an eel. And again, this is one of those eels that could be mistaken as Nessie, and it's swimming in the distance, very murky waters. But let's see if we have that now. For those who don't want to look this up while we show this to Fredo, I will describe it. What you see here is a pretty average fish in the foreground, very brown-green, murky water, and you're able to see maybe 5 to 10 feet into the depth. And
Ooh,
further
that's
in the
a
background,
big old eel.
Yeah, in the murk, you see this. Again, it's hard to tell how big it is. It could be 4 foot, it could be 2 foot, it could be 10 foot, but you see this very weird, long, hard to see serpent-like thing.
I will say it looks like a serpent. It doesn't look like the dinosaur that we all think Nessie looks like.
No.
For sure. That just looks like
the neck portion, right?
Snake in the water.
Snake in the water. Don't go swimming.
Mm.
That's not the 90s. That's Jaws.
It doesn't have to be 90s. I don't know why Christian's talking about 90s.
Every movie you have referenced over the past few weeks is from the
Ice
90s.
Age?
What are you talking about?
Is Ice Age 90s?
Never mind. All right.
Jaws?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, he didn't reference Jaws. You did Jaws.
Well, it came up.
Yeah. It's not only locked to the 90s.
Fredo, I don't know. I'm just trying to help you out, man.
I mean, for example, when he talked about the DNA scanner might not work during a crime scene because it could be false reads, in my mind I went, yeah, because you don't want to have a minority report. And that, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. See, that's where my mind was at, you know?
You know?
Mm-hmm. And then something, The Matrix, something, a movie.
Look, the number of movies I hold back, you'll never know.
See, but if you'd said Minority Report, it wouldn't have been a 90s movie. You would have broken the trend. It would have been different.
There's no trend.
When
Don't hold
was
me to a
Minority
trend.
Report?
Is that early 2000s?
It was early
right?
2000s.
It was it? Okay.
I would think so.
I just remember renting that game so many times because
The game?
yeah, it was good, dude.
The game was good.
The game
It
was
was a good
so good.
The hell?
The bullet time, like the way the mechanics worked, it was ahead of its time. You could slow things down and like there was ragdoll physics, and I just
What the
loved
hell?
that.
What year was it?
The movie, the game.
The
Both.
movie.
These are important.
I said both.
We gotta get in there. Both. Did
The
you need
movie
to ask?
released June 17th, 2002.
Oh,
See?
okay. So
Yeah.
the 90s of the 2000s.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
yeah,
90s of the 2000s.
Yeah.
The game was November 12th, 2002.
That was fast turnaround. That's why I
Oh,
didn't
that's
feel
how it
anything
is.
like the movie.
Yeah.
But man, was it fun. But yeah, so that's the video. Again, very hard to see. Some people do. I want to say this for the sake of clarity and transparency. Some people think that might just be a branch or a log floating by. And that's entirely possible. Some people have seen floating logs, and that is another theory that we're not going to talk about, but that just kind of logs could be Nessie.
Yeah, right. Just look at that log floating around.
Right.
But then again, you'd see it for a good chunk of time.
Yeah, but it makes a good photo and a good story.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're looking to
That
lie.
is true.
One last piece on eels. It is worth saying that the largest eel species can get up to 10 feet in length. And I
Holy
believe
hell.
one of, if not the longest recorded eel is about 13 feet.
Oh my goodness.
We got some Division I record setters here in Loch Ness.
Let me tell you. Them boys grown big over in
Well
Loch-
fed.
Well fed too.
It always tickles me when you say that. All right, moving on from the eels. Never thought I'd say that. The last theory we're going to talk about for the skeptics at home, is that Nessie never really existed, and it's always a possible theory when we talk about just almost most of the things. That things could be a hoax, it could be an ARG, it could be a story, right? So even though we have thousands of reports of people claiming to see Nessie, they could be seeing everyday water creatures such as eels or logs or what have you, and allowing themselves to believe that it is the Loch Ness Monster, again, due to that psychological phenomenon known as expectant attention. Again, to be clear, this is when people who expect or want to see something are more likely to misinterpret visual clues as a thing or the thing that they are wanting and expecting to see.
Yeah. So,
Drop the reference. Drop the reference.
No.
Dish the ref, dude. Dish the ref. Blow the whistle. Let's hear it.
No.
I got a movie for you. King Kong. Because the movie King Kong came out in March of 1933. Only 1 month. Very interesting timing. 1 month prior to the first modern reported Nessie sighting. And perhaps this is another example of storytelling influencing the real world.
Yeah.
Christian, do you remember when we had a mystery come before where we had a very similar situation where pop culture, I think it was the alien abduction, and I think there was a show on TV, a scientific show or a sci-fi show around space and aliens, and that their story took a lot of that in theory.
Yeah, the Barney and Betty Hill abduction.
Yes.
It was an episode of, I think, The Twilight Zone, I want to say.
Oh, no. You might be right, but I'm pretty sure it was a standalone show that I hadn't been familiar with. Either way.
It might have been both.
I think it might have been both. Basically,
that's the story. Yeah.
we've encountered times before where, due to very specific timing, it sounds like the story is built off of some pop culture that just immediately preceded it.
Yeah.
And it is worth mentioning that King Kong was
out, like,
a month before that, in 1933, in March, right? And so we were talking about those photos, we were talking about the stories.
There was a hit movie, and then it's on everyone's mind, and the movie I was referencing was the number 23.
Jim Carrey.
Yep.
His top tier comedy. King Kong was one of the first films, just keeping on that thread.
2007, by the way.
The 90s of the 2000s.
Yeah.
King Kong was one of those films that actually introduced the idea of kaijus, giant creatures existing in our real world. And I almost want to say that this also helped spawn things like Hollow Earth and spawn things like other cryptids, because they had to, in their story, obviously you have Skull Island, but in modern tellings of Godzilla and King Kong, right, we have the recent collaboration between those IPs. We have Hollow Earth. And I think that,
that's such a cool, just like,
it's very cool. I love that. And you have Journey to the Center of the Earth, you have The Land That Time Forgot, you have The Lost World, all of these. Brendan Fraser, these are all movies. Listen, Jurassic Park, you primed me. It's in the notes. Lost World.
I didn't write that. That's not me.
It says Lost World there?
I'm talking to Gracie through you.
Okay.
Gracie, I see you. It does, look. So it's almost like, dude, I'm telling you, I don't know what it is, your gut instinct, and you're looking at me like you know. You're like, this man is ethereal. This man's gut check is always predicting where we're headed. It's like you've written this podcast like a film.
Yeah.
Because every time we go into an episode, he's like, this is what I'm feeling. Or even if we're joking around, he's digging into something that we get into. And right now we're talking about movies in the 90s.
The look of smugness Alfredo has right now.
I just don't know. I'm just reading the notes beforehand.
My theory now is that you're an alien and a freak. One of those is fact.
One of those two things.
We love that we're doing this in
person now, man. I love that we're doing this in person.
I love that we're in person, dude. But yeah, I mean that's enough there, right? Like the fact that King Kong came out right around that time kind of really popularized that idea,
right? Like The Matrix, when that came out, everyone's like, "Oh my god, what if this isn't real and this is all like, yeah." Right. You have really big movies.
It primes you to think in those lanes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Harry Potter came out. Everyone wanted to be wizards.
Hey.
You tell me, Christian, that movie didn't come out? You didn't want to run around with the wand?
I was waiting for my Hogwarts letter. I'm not disagreeing.
There you go.
You know what
he
doesn't
never
matter?
got it, though.
No, I did.
Doesn't matter if Harry Potter...
rubbing it in.
We were all waiting. We spent our whole childhood and young adulthood waiting for that letter, and no post came on any Sunday. But here's the thing. Here's the beautiful thing about Harry Potter. The movie might not have come out in the 90s. Book series might
have to be in the 90s.
But the story starts in 1990. In the lore of the book. The first book takes place in 1990.
It really does, doesn't it?
It does.
It really does.
Interesting.
Man, the 90s are very centric to our reality. I think the world does not, it's not heliocentric.
It's the 90s repeating itself.
It's not Earth-centric. It is 90s-centric.
Yeah.
This solar system revolves around the 90s. Everyone born outside of our generation.
It's like the Matrix. It's
Too bad.
It's the 90s reinventing itself.
All right, this is where our ego peaks. Millennials, let's pipe down. Let's see. Let's get back to the topic. There have been many samplings at the end of the day of the loch, even as recently as 2019, that have found evidence of over 3,000 species. But again, I need to reiterate, nothing coming close or even remotely
Yeah.
that of a large enough creature to be considered a monster. So, I mean, even record-setting eels aren't really going to validate these large sightings that folktale might have for us.
See, the thing, like, we do a lot of cryptids, and I love them because they're just so interesting, and you've already heard about them most likely, and so it's like, cool, and now I get to know the history of it. The things that I hope for when we do these episodes is just like, give me that one little slice of, like, air quotes, evidence, right? That makes me go, I don't know, can't really explain that one.
Right.
But I'm also...
keep the mystery alive.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also satisfied by this one because it's like, look at this. By the way, this is why it's not real. Look at this. This is why it's not real. And I love that, right? And so, so it'll hit me with the like, I don't really know what that is, but I don't believe it.
Right.
Type thing.
An itemized list of either
like
still question marks or debunking, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, these are the like pieces of evidence.
He's holding up a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's on mine. There it is. There it is. There it is.
I'm sure Nick can put in a little bit of like actual.
But yeah, I don't know. It's fun, man. It's fun doing cryptids.
And you guys have really enjoyed them too. So I mean, we will continue to explore the world of cryptids, the supernatural. We're gonna keep our foot in every camp because we are cryptids ourselves. We have 10 feet each of us. And man, I'm just really chuffed with how this show has evolved. I mean, Christian and I continue to talk behind the scenes where we're headed, where we want to take this show, what kind of formats we want to explore, whether visual or otherwise, more auditory, you know, like narrative-driven podcasts would be kind of cool. But yeah, thank you guys so much for continuing to provide your feedback, reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, sharing us with your friends and everything. You all resonating with these topics is what gives us the comfort and freedom to really push our boundaries. I mean, when we first started this podcast, we had a pretty strong niche of like exploring internet-based mysteries, which is still one of my favorite avenues. We're never going to leave it.
Nope.
But the fact that we've jumped into like treasure hunts and cryptids and aliens and all of these, and even true crime is really like kept this show alive for us and made it really, really interesting beyond what we had originally envisioned. So just wanted to, as always, take a little moment, take a little beat and say thank you, Task Force, for being on board.
Thank you so much. And I will not stop referencing movies until I see a review that says, hey, I love this movie podcast. and occasionally they dive into a mystery.
You know, they talk about these fantastic films from the 90s, and every now and then sprinkle in a little bit of mystery along the way.
It's weird because they maybe give it one line, and that's about it.
Dude, I want to make like, you know those posters where you can like scratch it off once you've seen it? Like Jeremy Dooley is a friend of ours, a coworker and streamer. If you don't know him, you should really check him out. But he is like one of his like things that's so like Jeremy is that he doesn't watch a lot of movies. And so we make a lot of references when we work with him, and he's like, I never saw that. And I'm like, you didn't see it? Anyway, he got a poster a long time ago that has all of these just top tier films, you know, Godfather, Star Wars, like all these big ones.
The big hitters.
Yeah. And almost nothing from the 90s. And
what are you laughing?
What do you say?
What are you laughing?
Time Splitters, what do you say? Clock Stoppers, what do you say?
Small Soldiers.
Small Soldiers, dude. Dude, I referenced 13th Year last week, and you didn't get it. And I'm disappointed.
I know, sorry.
Dang, I thought I went too deep into the 90s.
All these big hitters. Small Soldiers.
But like
everything else is just a toy.
So anyway, he's got this poster that's kind of like scratch off style. So once you've seen it, you can scratch it off, and
that's really cool.
And it's really aesthetically pleasing. Now I want to do like a I don't know what it is, whether it's like a Red Web like watch list where it's like it's movies in conjunction with the topics, or it's just movie bingo, and just we smatter it with a bunch of 90s movies, and then when we say it, you have to check it off, and when we get a bingo, dump in it, movie night,
Red Web movie night,
Red Web movie night.
Oh man.
But yeah, that's the Loch Ness Monster. You know, we've really scratched the surface on cryptids. There are so many. Obviously, we started with a lot of the big hitters: Chupacabra, Bigfoot, Mothman, Loch Ness here.
I'm just glad because, like, again, it's something that I've heard of.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, now I know, I'm just like, okay, there's these two pieces of evidence, and this is how they're fake. And then also, The shape of the Loch Ness Monster, it's just like, it's
Shape
just totally
of water.
made up. It is like the shape of water. Yeah. Can you bang a fish? There are hand signals, and that's all I'll tell
If
you.
you've seen the movie, you know it's hands open, 2 index fingers point out. Before we leave, I think we need to. Was it Water Horse? Was the movie I referenced earlier on? We need to find the one. It's
Water
Yeah, go ahead
Horse.
and look it up.
Sorry,
Look it up
Sea
for me,
Biscuit?
that one. Stop. Spider-Man was in that one.
It was.
Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. Man,
No, you got-
now I'm thinking about Spider-Man.
I know. Not
Water Horse is it 2007? This thing?
But that's the movie I referenced.
When did you reference that? I didn't even hear that.
It was the movie that I talked about with Fredo, where I was like, yeah, some girl like kidnapped this baby hippo in the water, and like, but it turned out like she raised it in the bathtub, and then it turned out to be
Yeah, I remember that
Loch
one.
Ness Monster. I don't remember it. I just remember the trailer for it. It played before every film.
I've never heard of this movie.
Oh, it's got a pretty decent review. Oh, well,
Made
maybe-
$104 million. in the
Well,
box
if we get
office.
bingo, we'll watch Water Horse.
That's what we watch is Water Horse. He has someone like trying to mark off that board for like 5 years. And then once the last movie is referenced, they just go, finally,
What do I get to watch?
we watch Water Horse.
Oh, you've won a prize. Turn over the poster. It's a DVD taped to the back.
Water Horse.
Oh, what was this all for?
All for
Anyway,
nothing.
we should stop this podcast
Yeah.
before it goes too far. Thank you all for listening. We will see you, Fredo. I will see you next Monday for another mystery.
Yeah,
huh?
you won't. Nah, I'll be here.
What?
What?